All right. Welcome back, everybody, to Mixtapes to Myself. I'm Allie. If you're just joining us, um, I wrote a book ages ago, and right now I'm just trying to get it out there, kind of a deal. Um, but, anyways, on to the story. So, this is chapter 10 Pancakes and Paradoxes. Sam didn't even open her eyes before she stretched her arms above her head and pushed against the wall to stretch herself out. Her arms came down above her covers and she opened her eyes, said, "Good morning," to herself. Looking over at her alarm clock, it read 8:42 a.m. and she blinked a few times, adjusting to the light. She looked around and everything looked almost the same, but something felt different. She couldn't quite put her finger on it. She laid there and looked down at her bed, where her comforter was the same as, and her pillows all seemed to be there. Her stuffed puppy was still lying on the bed next to her. Her face was scrunched in confusion because everything seemed to be in its place, but she could still tell something was off. She reached for her phone, and it was the first indication that she was correct in her feeling that something was not right. Gone was the pink slider phone that she loved so much, and in its place was a large orange brick. On investigation, she realized that it flipped open to reveal a complete keyboard, and she found herself excited to try it before realizing that this wasn't her phone. Then she saw the date on the bottom of the screen, which read May 16th. She leapt out of bed and ran to her boombox, but the tape wasn't in there. She fumbled with the drawer and she had found it in yesterday, and it was tucked in the back collecting dust. She looked at the date, which said May 16th, 1999, 2004. She said a silent prayer and went back to her bedside table and opened the phone again. She clicked the icon for calendar and looked at the date, which read May 16th, 2008. She nearly threw the phone, but then inhaled deeply and sat down on her bed. She collapsed backwards and tried to figure out what the hell was going on. She genuinely thought that she had made it all up when she was 12, but clearly she hadn't. Unless this was some insane elaborate prank done by Ren. She opened her door and walked down the hall to her sister's room and knocked. There was no response, so she opened the door and screeched in a whisper, "Boom!" into the darkened bat cave of a room. "What?" she heard her sister mumble while rolling over so her back was facing Sam. "Did you mess with my cell phone?" she asked, hoping beyond all hopes that this was her sister screwing with her. Her sister flipped over and through bleary, blinking eyes said, "Why the hell would I do that?" She saw her sister's face and realized she was serious and replied, "No, I didn't screw with your phone. Now get out. I was sleeping," she said in a whiny, almost sing-song voice. Sam gently closed her sister's door and then realized that if this was all real, and this was a big theoretical if, then there was no way her living room downstairs would look the same. She walked down the stairs, a reluctance in her step, and once her head cleared the ceiling, she saw a blue living room set that she had never seen before in her life. "Shit," she whispered to herself. So this was real. This was actually happening. She was 4 years in the future, and she had literally no idea what her life was like or what was going on. What had she done the last time? She racked her brain and then shook her head at her own dumb question because she had a literal tape explaining what she did the last time. She walked back up to her bedroom, grabbed the tape, and popped it into her boombox. She listened to little Sam explaining that she had gone to see Nick almost immediately at the comic book store. Nick, she whispered to herself. She hadn't spoken to Nick in months back in 2004 because for some reason Ben and him never seemed to get along. Shit, she whispered again. But then she remembered that this was 4 years later. Maybe they were on great terms again. There was only one way to find out. It was closer to 9 o'clock in the morning now, and she grabbed the new phone and flipped it open. She loved this full keyboard business and wasn't sure she wanted to go back to 2004 in her old technology. She tapped out a quick message to Nick asking if he wanted to grab some breakfast and then sat down at her dresser again. She looked at the mirror and realized that all of the pictures of Ben and her were gone. She felt a pinch in her heart at the realization that they probably weren't together anymore. Her phone dinged and she flipped it open to read the reply. Sure, pick you up in 20? The relief flooded through her body as she realized that there was at least one person she could confide in. She also realized she was still in pajamas, and she was not the kind of dainty sleeper who wakes up looking perfectly coiffed. Instead, she generally woke up looking like a bridge troll that had been run over by a freight train and then dragged for a few miles. She started running a brush through her hair and eventually gave up and threw it in a messy bun. She threw on whatever jeans were on her floor and grabbed a bright orange shirt from her closet. The memory flooded back as she realized this was the shirt she had chosen the last time. She remembered being excited that her team shirt still fit her. She threw the shirt over her head and looked in the mirror. She looked almost exactly the same, but there was a difference in her that she couldn't quite put a finger on. An author's note. One of my favorite lines that I have written is the one about looking when I wake up like a bridge troll that has been hit by a freight train and then dragged for several miles. I make this joke all the time. When I lived in the States, this is a huge difference between where I am from and like where I live now. And I have to apologize. It is very hot right now in McNess. So if you notice that I'm wiping my face or fanning myself, it's because it's so hot in my house. But I used to make this joke all the time when I lived in the States, but my kids understood that I was being sarcastic. And then I moved to Morocco and the kids did not understand it. So I would like make jokes about my appearance or like myself or whatever. And they'll go, no, miss, you're so pretty. And I'm like, just let me be a bridge troll. That's like, these are my work shirts. Like these are my nice shirts. But you'll notice I'm always in my regular clothes when I record the actual chapter. And it's so funny because I have so many friends who are incredibly fashionable and like worry about their appearance. And then you have me who's just like, I actually have it behind my computer. This is like a 15-year-old baseball cap. This is how you will see me in McNess at all times, in a t-shirt and schlubby pants. I have no problem looking like a bridge troll or looking like a hobo. Couldn't care less. But it is incredibly true. And like what I wrote into Sam that's true about me is I do not wake up looking pretty. My hair is everywhere. I'm like usually sweating. Yeah, I don't wake up looking nice. It's just not a thing. But I love the bridge troll line. It's one of my favorite. It's, it's one of my favorites because it is something I say about myself constantly. And I just think it's wicked funny. It is sarcasm, by the way. I don't actually think I look like a bridge troll. Otherwise, I would not be putting myself out on the internet with my book. Huh. Anyways, back to the story. She grabbed her purse, threw her phone inside, and headed downstairs. Her mom was sipping her coffee on the couch and had her back to Sam. She walked up behind her mom and hugged her around the neck and said, "Good morning, Mama." Her mom took her free hand and clutched Sam's forearm firmly, as if it was a hug. "Ooh, good morning, daughter. What was that all about?" her mom asked seriously. "Nothing. Just woke up on the right side of the bed, I guess," she said and smiled at her mom. "Where are you going this early in the morning?" she asked. "Just going to grab breakfast with Nick," she said, and she kissed the top of her mom's head and said, "Thanks for being my mom, Mama." Her mom was clearly confused by this level of affection, but Sam couldn't help herself. The relief she felt was palpable. She was so comforted by the fact that her mom was still sitting on the couch this morning watching HGTV as if nothing had changed. As if Sam hadn't time jumped into her older, now 21-year-old body. She was just happy to have her here in front of her, and she wanted her to know that. "Well, thank you for being my daughter." "Daughter?" she said, and she laughed and continued laughing as Sam walked out the front door. She could still hear her mother cackling while she walked out the porch and waited on the front steps for Nick. The lilacs were still in bloom, and she inhaled the scent as deeply as she possibly could, relieved that some things never changed. A car pulled up and she saw Nick in the driver's seat, and she jumped down the stairs and got into his car. "Good morning," she said, feeling reassured just by his presence. She felt like the luckiest girl in the world. Even though something really strange was happening, she had a constant in Nick. "Top of the morning to you, lass," he said, and tipped his cap dramatically. He was wearing a newsboy cap that on anyone else might have looked silly and dated, but he was somehow always able to pull off anything he decided to wear. She remembered the time he had played bagpipes at a graduation ceremony and he showed up in a full getup, including a kilt. Anyone else would have been met with chuckles and whispers, but not Nick. She had a growing theory that it was something about his confidence and the fact that he couldn't care less about what people thought. She had been lost in thought and suddenly realized that they weren't moving, and he was staring at her face as if he was trying to figure out what had changed. "So," he said while shifting the car into drive and pulling back onto the road. "Breakfast?" he said. There was suspicion clouding his face, but only ever so slightly. If you didn't know him as well as Sam did, it would be imperceptible. He drove to the other side of town to Lottie's, their favorite hole-in-the-wall diner. There was a farm in town, and they had a breakfast spot, but she preferred this tiny one run by another local family. The breakfast was cheaper, absolutely delicious. Plus, they had the best grilled corn muffin in town and really great stuffed grape leaves at lunch. Sam also preferred to support small local businesses when she could because the farm was doing just fine. They walked in and grabbed a booth, and Sam immediately started playing with the jam packets. She knew that this had happened before, and she had told him all about it, but she found herself nervous that he would somehow not believe her this time. A waitress came over with a small pad of paper and took their order. He got something called a farmer's breakfast with pancakes, and she got a broccoli and cheese omelet with bacon and a grilled corn muffin. The waitress left and put in their order while they smiled and thanked her, and they placed their menus back in their holder on the table. Oh, they have the best corn muffins in town, she said as she watched the waitress telling the cook what they wanted. She waved to the cook through the window. She didn't know his name, but she'd been going there since she was a kid and had been waving to him every time she came in for just as long. How much of her life was just remnants of her childhood that she never let go of? Sam's capability of nostalgia seemed to be unmatched. She wasn't sure, but she thought she really liked it. It was like settling into a comfortable recliner with a blanket and a cup of cocoa on a snowy day. It just felt like home when she was able to continue a tradition, no matter how small it seemed. Another author's note, and it's kind of a funny one, because one of the other things that I kind of incorporated into Sam's character is that concept of nostalgia. And I don't think it's just me. I think, especially millennials, we are some of the most nostalgic people that I've ever met. Like, I just made a random TikTok about Pizza Hut and like how if Pizza Hut brought back the red cups and the salad bar and like for do like a book reading thing. Remember when they did that? Or if you read a certain number of books, you got a small pizza. Bring it back for adults. Be like, I did this. It'd be so funny because we would come in droves. So I don't think it's just a me thing. I think a lot of us, especially those of us born in like the late 80s, mid to late 80s, early 90s, we grew up in such an almost idyllic time where like stuff wasn't so bad. And then the world just set itself on fire. So now all of us look back at that time when we were little and we're just like, oh, wouldn't it be nice if like every other news story wasn't like, oh, hey, another country bombed another country. The economy is going to hell. So, but I talk about nostalgia because the other funny part of this book is it's not just like a character note for Sam, the whole book is nostalgia. And part of the reason I loved writing this was because I went back and I did do some research. So, like, some of the things are inaccurate, especially the music part, because there are playlists on the channel. Um, they're not 100% accurate to May 16th in that year. They're somewhere in the ballpark. But that's the other part of this that I've had a lot of fun doing is trying to look back at like my former selves and think like, what was I listening to in 1999, in 2004, in 2008, which is coming soon. So I think, and I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think there's something beautiful about going back to when you were a kid, going back to the nostalgic things. It's like when you smell something and it immediately brings you back to, Christmas in 96, or anytime I smell my mama's pound cake and I'm immediately back in her kitchen when I'm like 10. I think nostalgia is a really strong emotion. I don't actually know if nostalgia is an emotion, but I'm going to call it an emotion. Um, I think it's a really strong thing. And I think every single one of us has that to a certain extent. Like there's something that brings you back to a different time. But, anyways, this book was built on nostalgia. I'm basically built on nostalgia. that's one of the things that I absolutely put into my character from my own life, is that concept of like looking back and like, I do love her comment of like going to the breakfast place and waving to the chef every day or the cook every day. Like, I'm still that person. Like, anytime I go back to Ifran, where I used to live, I always run into like two or three people that haven't seen me in ages. And they're like, how are you? And it's been years since I lived there, but you never forget. And it's just such a lovely thing to like carry with you of like the value. And this is also why I always say lead with kindness, lead with goodness, because if you do, people don't forget you and that kindness spreads. Anyways, back to the story. Yes, Sam, I know they have the best corn muffins in town. I'm the one who told you that, he said with a touch of impatience. Now, are you going to tell me what's going on? Because I can tell something's going on, but I can't quite put my finger on it, and the suspense is killing me. Sam sighed and laughed at the same time. God, I hate how perceptive you are sometimes, she said to him as he tipped his hat again in silent thanks. He was waiting for her to spill her secrets, and she knew she just had to rip the Band-Aid off. Well, I'm Sam, but I'm... She paused and his eyes went a tiny bit wider. I'm not this Sam. Nick slapped the table and said far too loudly, I knew it! Everyone in the breakfast place turned to look at them, and she stared at him threateningly. Shut up, she said in a forceful whisper, eyes wide, teeth clenched. If she had telekinesis, then he would have been in for a world of hurt. Sorry, everyone, he said to the diner. Sorry, he said again quietly to Sam before continuing. I'm sorry, but this is so exciting. It happened again. I've been thinking about this since the last time, and I have so many more theories now, and I am so much better equipped to try to figure this out. He looked like she imagined Dr. Frankenstein must have looked when he was drumming up the plans for recreating his human. He didn't quite have the full manic look of the doctor when he actually brought his creature to life, but she imagined that this was what it looked like when all the wheels in your head are spinning all at once and with purpose. She giggled at the thought, because if she had wheels in her head, she was pretty sure there were fat, confused hamsters in them who didn't know how the wheels worked or what to do with themselves. So where are you from exactly? Nick asked her. 2004, she said. And Nick's jaw dropped. Okay, all right, he said. So you're... He calculated it in his head. 17. Aw, he said, and she pursed her lips and rolled her eyes. We do not have time for you to act like I'm a child. Remember, I'm supposed to be 21 right now, and there's some weird time travel caper going on that we need to figure out, she reminded him. Yeah, okay, right, he said. But she could tell he wasn't entirely there with her. He was pretty clearly running ideas through his head about theories he had already concocted between the last time jump and this one. Okay, so the last time jump, he paused, trying to remember. May 16th, 2004. She said to him while still playing with the jam packets. Ooh, okay. So today is, and he checked his watch and realized, May 16th, 2008. Okay. She had lost him to his thoughts, and so she was just waiting patiently for him to come back to Earth and discuss those thoughts with her. She was stacking jam packets when the waitress came back, out with their breakfast, and she immediately buttered the already buttered grilled corn muffin and took a huge bite. Oof, there was a sweetness to it, and the texture was a dreamy, pillowy, perfect muffin. Add on to it the creamy saltiness of the butter, and it was one of her favorite things in the whole world. She was chewing slowly, savoring the melting flavors in her mouth when Nick finally started talking between bites of his pancake. So you've jumped on May 16th both times, he said. So that means there's a good chance you will also jump on, well, today. Sam looked confused, so he explained further. Okay. Well, the last time you jumped was May 16th, 2004. And I'm guessing that yesterday, when you went to bed, it was the 15th, he asked. Yep, she said, still not fully understanding his point. So this answers the question I had 4 years ago. What happened to 17-year-old Sam's consciousness? So you jumped to 21, but then what happened to my Sam's consciousness? Theoretically, she also jumped into an older body, and so on and so forth, he explained. Oh, Sam's head hurt at the idea of all of this. But it suddenly dawned on her. She swallowed the piece of bacon she had just bitten into and almost yelled, "You mean this is going to keep on happening?" Her mouth was hanging open and she was starting to panic. Why was this happening in the first place? What the hell was going on? It seems likely that this will continue happening until whatever loop is completed. I'm not sure where 21 is now, but she's probably a few years into her future, and then that future self is a few years into her future, and it continues until the cycle ends. So how does the cycle end? She asked, reluctant and scared of the answer. That's the part I don't know. It could be that you jump like this until there's... He paused, cleared his throat, and looked down at his breakfast. Well, until there's no more you left to jump to. Great. So I jump until I'm dead? That sounds like a great fucking plan, she said. The frustration was so intense, it was seeping from her pores at this point. She took an angry bite of hash browns. Okay, well, not necessarily, he said. That's why I said I really don't know. It could be that you continue jumping until then, or it could be more of a circle, like a time loop, where at some point one of you goes backwards, or it could be that the last jumper goes to like an alternate universe or reality. There are things like string theory, where there are multiple universes existing like strings on a cello, or box universe theory, where past, present, and future are all simultaneously existing at the same time. It's all super cool and super confusing, so there's no real way of knowing how or why this is happening. Well, that's a relief, she said, with such sarcasm that she apologized. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to take this out on you. I'm just really scared. This is a lot for anyone to handle, and the idea that this might keep happening like forever, it's really shitty, she said. Nick was nodding and eating the last of his eggs when he replied, "It's okay. I'm excited because it proves that some of these theories about the universe must be true, and that's really cool. But I know that this is really freaky for you, and I will put Science Nick away, and I will put Friend Nick back in his stead." He physically pretended to remove a small piece of himself and set it in a little box, which he mimed closing, shutting the lid, and tying it with a bow, which he placed the invisible box next to him on the bench. and then reached his hand out to touch her forearm. What can I do to help? She smirked and shook her head at the theatrics of it all, but felt the relief pour over her. She took the final bite of her buttered corn muffin, which she had been saving as her perfect last bite of breakfast, and pondered his question as she chewed. She honestly had no idea how he could help at this point. There was so much going on in her head that she could barely slow the overweight hamsters down so she could assess what she needed. She shook her head and said, I honestly have no idea. That's okay, he said, and he patted her arm. Everything's going to be okay, Sam. We'll figure this out, he said. And if we can't, then we'll at least come up with a plan. This is a very brief author's note because I know somebody who has confirmed this for me. I've known a few people. The perfect last bite. When you have a meal and you literally almost set it aside. You're like, I'm going to finish everything else, but then that's that perfect last bite. Like, absolutely, I would have saved that last tiny bit of corn muffin for the end of my breakfast because the rest of it is delightful. I love those corn muffins. That place, unfortunately, is no longer in business. So now I have to make my own. But they really did have the best grilled corn muffins of all time. Oh, they were so good. But yeah, let me know in the comments if you also save your perfect last bite when you get food, because it's one of my favorite things. Anyways, back to the story. They had left the breakfast place and gotten back into Nick's car. There was still so much to discuss, but they needed somewhere that no one would be suspicious or overhear any of this. The only thing they really knew about time travel was from movies, TV, and of course their comic book storylines. Generally, telling people about it led to someone trying to find ways to capitalize and take advantage, and Sam did not need that kind of nonsense on top of the stress of this happening in general. So they went to the local park and just camped out underneath the shade of a big oak tree while Nick debriefed her about how her life had turned out. Her and Ben had broken up during the summer of 2006 after their first year of college, where they had gone together. Sam panicked for a minute because she hadn't even thought about college or whether she was supposed to be in class. But Nick assured her that she usually stacked her classes 3 to 4 days a week, and this semester she didn't have classes on Friday. She usually worked, but she had landed on the rare Friday that she had off, although she would have work in the morning. She found out that she worked in the local bakery of her local grocery store, so early weekend mornings seemed to be a regular occurrence. Ugh, so I took over her one really good day off this week, she asked, Nick grimacing. Yeah, but let's hope that she lands in a place where she won't mind, he said, laughing at the face she made in response. So what happened after we broke up? She asked. She had just swallowed her pride yesterday and apologized to him to salvage their relationship, and she couldn't even imagine her life without him. But here she was, living through that exact scenario. He was explaining the whole process of her building her old friendships back up, going out at school, and just generally expanding her life. It all sounded good, but she just couldn't wrap her head around a life without him, and she changed the subject. So, what else is going on in my life that I might need to know? She asked him, looking off at the playground where kids were shouting and running. They reminded her of when she was a kid and her dad would play tag with her and Ren. She remembered the big tire swing that was hanging on its side so that 3 kids could sit on it at once. Her dad used to spin that thing like a top, and they would tuck their feet into the tire and wind their arms around the metal chains. He had let another kid join them once and told him to hold on. They had warned him multiple times, and he swore he understood. But then once that tire got going, he had catapulted through the air like a circus clown, but a wholly unprepared one. It was the last time her dad ever let anyone but his own kids onto the swing. All right, final author's note. Um, one of the things that is absolutely based in fact is the playground thing. My dad used to play tag with me and my little sister, and it was really, really fun. He kind of played it like a weird troll game because there were a lot of bridges and things, and he was a tall-ish man. And so we would be like trying to like run across a bridge and we'd see his hand come up. He got stomped on a lot by children. With tag, like everybody could be involved because it wasn't like super weird. The tire swing, that story is also completely true. It was the kind of tire swing, it's not vertical, it's horizontal. I don't even know if they do this anymore because it just seems dangerous. But this was the 90s. Who cared? But I do remember there was one time that a kid requested, he was like, I really want to come on the tire swing with you guys. And it was me and my sister. And my dad kind of said, okay. But then he was like, you really got to strap in. And we would tuck our feet into the like open edges of the tire itself and then wrap our arms around the like the metal, what are they called? Whatever the metal things are that you hang a tire swing on. But we would hang ourselves and just like buckle in. And then my dad would get that thing going, just going. And that kid, we set, my dad said it, me and my sister said it. We were like, you really got to buckle in. And he was like, I've got this. That kid took off like a rocket ship, just launched him. To my knowledge, the kid was fine. This was a playground that at least had wood chips and not gravel or concrete. So, as far as I know, the kid was fine. But yeah, that story is 100% real and like kind of instilled my love of playgrounds to this day. Like, you give me a good swing set, I will stay on it for hours. Oh, I love the swings. But love a good playground. I had to re-record this, so I'm doing this by memory. I will say it was funny because the last time I was talking about this, I was like, kids bounce. So like 90% of the time if a kid falls, they're going to be fine. Like other than scrapes, bruises, head stuff is serious. But if you have the opportunity to play on a playground as an adult, go for it. I will, however, say I once went down one of those slides, not the straight ones, the ones that bounce, and I hit the flat part and I went airborne, landed directly on my tailbone. And I was at my best friend's wedding. And man, I was messed up for at least a couple days. I don't remember how long it was, but I bruised the heck out of my tailbone going down that stupid slide. So remember, play with caution. Because we are all older now, if you're an adult, but also we're much heavier. So we go airborne much easier than kids do. It hurts a lot more. But yeah, playgrounds will always hold a special place in my heart. They're always kind of one of my favorite places to go. So like anytime I'm going through like really, really rough stuff throughout my life, I would try to find a playground and a swing set. Um, but yeah, that part of the story is 100% true. That tire swing story is one of my favorites because he really did. He got launched, and I mean, this was back in like 92, 93. Like it was decades ago. So like, if for some reason that kid ever sees these videos, sorry, we didn't mean to. Anyways, back to the final part of the story. I only knew about your day off today because you invited me to a party tonight at Jacob's place, he said, and then elaborated at her confusion. Jacob is the new boyfriend. Oh no, she said, knowing full well that even if she was in her 21-year-old body, that she was technically her 17-year-old self, and she was absolutely and unequivocally still dating Ben, whether she was there or not. She whispered quietly. This was going to add a layer of difficulty to her day. Listen, we don't have to go to the party if you don't want to, Nick said to her. I just really don't know what I'm supposed to do here, she explained. Because you'd assume I'm here to learn something or whatever, but at the same time, I have to maintain her life while also staying true to my own life back home and hoping that my other self is not screwing up my life back home either. She said all of this quickly in one breath. Her knees hugged to her chest tightly. It wasn't that she didn't want to go to the party. In reality, she really wanted to go to that party. She had never been to a college party before, and the temptation to attend was more enticing than anything she had heard thus far. However, how could she navigate going to a college party hosted by her current boyfriend and somehow avoid him as much as possible without ending up ruining the relationship for Sam? Nick's pocket started ringing suddenly, and he pulled his cell phone out and answered it. Hey, what's. Oh, hold on. Calm down. Take a deep breath, she heard him say. He hadn't even gotten through the basic pleasantries before he was trying to calm down whoever was on the other line. He mouthed the name Phoebe to her in between uttering calming words and phrases into the phone. Her face lit up in excitement at the name of her other friend before it was clouded with worry. She was so excited to see Phoebe here, but she also wasn't sure it would be a good idea to tell her what was actually going on with this time traveling nonsense. She was so deeply worried about how upset Phoebe seemed to be on the phone. She heard Nick telling Phoebe that they would pick her up in a little while, and then he hung up the phone. Okay, I have a plan, he said. A somewhat devious smile stretched across his face. Sam laughed, but wasn't sure whether to be relieved or terrified at his expression. All right, everybody. I just want to do a final thank you. Please comment. I do read the comments. I don't have that many people watching right now. So I do read all the comments. I do try to listen. So if there's something that you like about these videos, let me know. If there's something you want to see more of, let me know. But also, let me know if there's something in this story so far that has connected with you in any way. Because that's always a really fun conversation to have. So please comment, please share, because if nobody shares, if nobody likes or subscribes, I'm dead in the water. I think this book has a really big heart. I think it's a really lovely story. So please subscribe, like, share. I do read all my comments again. And thank you again for those of you who are still here with me. I appreciate y'all so much. Next week, I will be right on time. So this video unfortunately was delayed because I was not feeling well. Next week, it will be on time. It will be up on Saturday. And my Wattpad story will be up on Thursday as scheduled. But thank you all to those of you who are here and who are sticking with me. I appreciate y'all so much. And just remember what I always say, and I've said for like 15 years of teaching: lead with kindness. Kindness is key. If you lead with this, everything will work out in the end. So go out this week, spread some sunshine. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for being here. And I will see you next Saturday. All right. Love y'all. Bye. Oh, recording is so hard sometimes.